In this video, we'll try some question about reaction mechanism. Okay, and then for first one, here they give you a sample mechanism already, and then they want you to classify all the substance in the equation whenever they're reaction or product or catalyst, and also intermediates. Then we think like the easiest one must be reactant, because there must be something come up in the left-hand side, so it must be T. That's already a reactant. And then product and intermediate, they're kind of like similar, because both of it will form it in the step 1 or maybe in step 2. But then the difference between product and intermediate is like only intermediate will we use it in the second step. Therefore, you form X and also R and also S, but then just only X and we use it in step 2. So X will be intermediate, and then R will be product. Then the only one left behind will be U. Now, actually, U is like quite similar to T, because both of it are in the left-hand side. Then why do you say U is a reaction? Because the feature is like U is used it, but then they will be formed in second step. So technically, they are not consumed in the overall reaction. There will be a characteristic of catalyst. This catalyst, if we talk about the properties, there's like something that can increase the rate of reaction, but then itself is like chemically unchanged. If chemically unchanged, that means they are not reacted in the reaction. So for U will be like catalyst. For part B, okay, we need to write down the rate expression. Then just like what I said in the last video, it's like only rely on slow step. Then slow step, the only reactant is just T and U. So we just write down T and U. And then even the catalyst is not really important, we still can write it down in the rate equation, and then it can be included in the rate equation. And then for C, to combine the overall equation, then we have just adding the left hand side and the right hand side together. So you have 2T plus U plus X for the left hand side, and then adding everything in the right hand side together. So you should have X plus R plus U plus S. But then you can see that something is like duplicate, like U and U here, and then the X and X here. So to simplify, you will get 2T, give you R and S as the product. Then here is like another equation. Then this side is like you need to predict the mechanism based on the rate equation and also the overall equation that they told you. And then for that kind of things, they might told you some more hints, is like the slow step. Otherwise, if there's like so many steps and then you have to predict the slow step by yourself, then it would be really difficult. But then actually most of the time, if the mechanism is only the overall order is only first order or second order, then most of the time I would suggest you can predict the first step as a slow step all the time. Because if don't only second order or first order, that means you only have to include 2 chemical or even 1 chemical only. Then you can just put the 2 chemical or the 1 substance in the first step. It will be like easy to do the remaining. Therefore, if they're like slow step for the first one, then I have to put all the thing in the rate equation in step 1 in the reactant side. So I will put H2O2 plus I minus. And then just like what I said in the video, you can predict the product side as some product and also intermediate. Yeah, all the time it's like some product and intermediate. And then you can see like from the overall equation here, you only have 1 I minus, therefore you obviously cannot form I2. So what you can only form as a product must be H2O. And then you just combine everything left behind as an intermediate. That means I minus and 1 oxygen together, then give you IO minus. And the IO minus will be intermediate. That means you have to like reuse it in step 2. And then H2O will be a water, so no need to reuse it in step 2. Then you can see that in the overall equation, we already use the H2O2, we already use R minus, and also another R minus here. so you can't use any more I minus. So here must be adding with H plus, and then give you HIO, which is appear in step 3. And then based on step 3, they will form iodine as a product already. So I put iodine as product. So you want rewrite iodine in step 4. Then the only thing that you can consider as an intermediate must be OH minus, because you can't see any OH minus in your product side of the overall equation. And then the only thing that we haven't included in the mechanism will be one of the H plus. So here must be adding H plus, and then combine, and then give you water. Then here will be the overall mechanism. So here will be some sample question to demonstrate how you do some important question for rate equation and then the rate mechanism. And next one, this one will be related to is a kind of Edexcel only for part of the information, because here is like for SN1 and SN2 reaction. But then still for the first A and B, as they are related to everyone can try this one. Because for part A and B, it's just related to some basic information for order of reaction and also reaction mechanism. And then for part A, to deduce the order, then obviously you can just compare the experiment, and then you can see when you compare 1 and 2, here's like times 2, and then here's like around times 2 point something, then we can consider as double also. That means correspond to 1 cobalt butane, it should be like first order, because the rate and concentration, they're directly proportional. And then we can take a look at the first, the second one, and then third one. You can see it's like times 4, and then here is also around times 4. That means with respect to hydroxide, that's also first order reaction. Yeah, then here will be the answer of part A already. And then for part B, I think everyone knows, like, if you want to form alcohol from halogenoalkane, then you can actually add sodium hydroxide. Okay, but then when you draw the mechanism, like the one that you learn in AS, you only draw with the hydroxide, right? And then you will draw just something like that, and then put the arrow from the bonding to halogen, and then put the arrow from the lone pair, or maybe someone learned put the arrow from the minus charge. Both are okay. Pointing to carbon represented the attack, and then the repase, and then you will form Cl minus and alcohol. Then actually you can see that in the mechanism, no one will ask you to draw the sodium ions, just like the other reaction, like sodium cyanide, in terms of the nucleophilic addition with ketonealdehyde. You also will ignore the sodium ions, just drawing the cyanide ions. So that means the K plus or Na plus, they're not involved in the mechanism. Therefore, actually, there are something called spectator ions, which is something that you will add in a reaction, because you can't say adding a hydroxide ions, which is not possible in chemistry. You always have to add a compound, but then just the compound may contain something that is not relevant, just like the K plus and A plus. Though they are not really related to the reaction, then you can say they are spectator ions. Yeah. So for C, then you can see this time is related to the mechanism, but then they have a restriction is like this time is like secondary compound. Then if you study Edexcel, then this time you're getting confused, because they only told you primary are favorable for SN2, tertiary halogen are favorable for SN1. Then how you know for secondary? Then technically, like both SN1 and SN2, they are possible. But then obviously, like there will be like small more details to classify them more likely to SN1 and SN2, but they're just not required in electrochemistry. Therefore, in the question, they actually told you some more hints. This time, with 2 cobalt butane, the mechanism is only first order. So if they are only first order, here is give you a hint, they will undergo SN1 mechanism. That's what we can identify from the question. That's an important hint. Therefore, we all know that if they're SN1 mechanism, then we draw the mechanism, ignore the hydrogen first maybe, then we can draw the arrow like from the bonding to chlorine first. Then you can form a carbocations, and also Cl minus. Then at the same time, the hydroxide will also appear. Then the second step will be just the lone pair pointed to the carbocations, and then give you the alcohol as the product. So sometimes they may not really ask you about the primary and also tertiary halogenoalkane, because those questions have to be repeated for so many times already. So they may give you a hint, give you a question for secondary halogen, but then they will tell you some more things in order to help you to think about a mechanism. Otherwise, secondary halogenoalkane can actually undergo different mechanism. Both SN1 and SN2 are possible. Then how here is related to your equation, then obviously here is like involving two steps, and then only step one, which is the slower step, and it's like only include the 2-chlorobutane, which represent that the first order. And then you can see that it's like does not include the OH minus ions, which also represent that they're like zero order reaction. Therefore, in here for part C and D, you can see that like how Edexcel may do a relationship between a rate equation correction and also organic reaction. Therefore, you may using this one as a reference, other than just remember that okay, tertiary for SN1, and then the first order, primary for SN2, and then there will be a second order reaction. You may also take this one as a reference for kind of a special case. If they ask you secondary, then how they are going to ask you. Then obviously for those that are not Edexcel student, if you're not in Edexcel, then you can just ignore C and D, and then just using A and B as a reference